Hey, everybody. This is Bishop John Selden. Technical difficulty. I like doing this kind of thing because every now and then you hit the button, you hit the wrong button, and then it'll do something, and then you can come back. This ain't all high polished. This is like right from the living room, from the dining room, from the house. I'm in what we call Studio A. That's place at the house that we call Studio A. That's what we call it. I appreciate very much coming to you in this venue, this format, to talk to my friends and colleagues in the work, to do a bit of dreaming, to do a little bit of conversation, to do a little bit of forecasting. I'm a preacher, so sometimes we do a little prophesying. Yeah, we'll do a little prophesying, all about actually bringing information and maybe something that's interesting and relevant to the lives of you who are a part of what I would call the broader work. And tonight, and we're going to do it because we are related to Moral Monday, Connecticut. Most often, if we're doing something, we're going to do it on what day of the week? It's going to be a Monday. It's going to be a Monday. And so I'm happy and proud and glad to introduce to some of you the man behind the scenes who makes things happen in this state. There are a couple of people who actually make things happen in this state, who I can call a friend, brother, and colleague. There are a couple of people that when it comes to things that are public service, policy making, and maybe a little political, if there's a voice, if there's a couple of people I'm going to listen to, tonight you're going to hear from one of those people. And let me introduce him. He formerly, before he was in the current role he's been in for the last couple of years, he was the vice president of the Connecticut Health Foundation. He was their vice president of policy and communications. Before that, he worked for a bunch of people, couple of people who if I call their names, you would know who they are. And he's been close to the place that I hang out with most regularly. He's an alum of Trinity College and was on the board of trustees, during some very trying times during that season in the life of this institution that I have something to do with. You all know that. Let me introduce him as the outgoing chief of staff of the current governor of the state of Connecticut. Let me introduce to you and bring out the green room and onto this platform, Brother Paul H. Mounds Jr. I like that junior boy.
You hit me with the H too. Nice. Man, that means you know me.
Oh, thank you for saying yes. I have to be honest. Paul, we were together recently. He said, "When you gonna invite me on the show?" He was all up in my Kool-Aid, all up in my kitchen. When you gonna invite me?
Well, I'm on everything on Mondays. I'm going through Twitter and I see the stream, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get the call tomorrow. Then I go through the stream next week. I don't know, maybe he'll call me. Like, I think I've known them long enough. Like,
well,
I'm happy to be here. You are not just a friend, not just a brother. You're also a mentor, and also someone who I can reach out to spiritually as well. And we'll talk a lot about that. But thank you. It's just always a pleasure to be in your company.
Likewise, I think the world of you, Paul, and we could just do a love fest right there and stay right there and never go any further. But it would be a disservice to everybody else, although it would be cool for us, right? Me and you, that would be good. Listen, um, uh, so first, can we talk a little bit about your background? So the reason I'm asking is because many folk, while they've heard the term chief of staff,
Mm-hmm.
well, they've heard some of the positions you have held, and they're kind of high and lofty.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, most folk don't know what chief of staffs in a political context actually do.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that. But before, what prepares you? How do you get to be that? What prepares you to go from whatever you were doing to a space like this? What's your background?
Let's first and foremost, I was born on Vine Street in Hartford. Let's start there. To two parents from Hartford. And then eventually we moved to East Hartford and grew up in East Hartford. So I'm a product of Connecticut. I am Connecticut. So much so, like, I got my Pez with me at all time. That's how much Connecticut I am. And then, of course, I went to Trinity College, where I had an opportunity to look at many schools because I was a student athlete, played football, and Trinity was the school I wanted to go to because I was from Hartford and I was from this area. And I wanted to show to my cousins and other family members that we can achieve and have the collegiate dreams as well. And I went there for political science, focus in government, and that's when it started my trajectory. I started off as a driver to John Larson. That was my first job, basically. And while I did press assistant on the side and such, but if you really look at what was my majority of my time was being in the car with John Larson at the time when he was vice chair of the caucus. And I always try to tell interns and people, there's a reason why we got two ears and only one mouth. There's a reason why we got two eyes and only one mouth. I was someone who just wanted to be a sponge and take up all the information and be a fly in the wall and learn and see the machinations of how someone in that position thinks and how do they approach their position. And eventually I started moving up the ladder, became a communications director for him, went to work for Senator Blumenthal and ran his outreach office and deputy state director at 25 years old, and then went to work for Governor Malloy and became his legislative director and policy director. And of course, you talked about the Connecticut Health Foundation, which is a place that I love very much, which is in the philanthropic world, and got asked to come back to Governor Lamont, asked me to join his team as a chief operating officer and then chief of staff. And I've taken all of those elements of all those jobs and all the people that I've surrounded myself to mold my motto and who I was as a chief of staff. I was very civic minded. I was very community focused, but I also knew that one of the biggest things in my job was to make sure government was moving. All of our agencies, even quasi-publics, even UConn, where I served on the board on behalf of the governor, making sure government is responsive to the people and responsive to their constituents. I always say that's first and foremost what my job was. And the reason why I think my approach was a certain way is because of my upbringing.
It's funny, Paul. It's funny. I remember you walked up to me. We was at an event, and I actually remembered you from some other stuff. But you walked up to me, you handed me your card, and you said we should talk. I sit and I looked at your card, and you were then working for Congressman Larson,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, and you leaned into me a little bit. You said, "You're right about a lot of that you just mentioned." We were at something, and I must have had something to say, and I was a little fiery.
Mm-hmm.
And
you fiery?
Yeah, right. Me fiery, and that was the beginning. I mean, I watched your trajectory. I watched it, and it in talking with young people in particular.
Mm-hmm.
They often ask, well, how did you get to be what you are? And one of the things I say to them, I never thought I would be doing what it is that I do now. That was not the goal. The goal was not to do all of the things, whatever you think I do, and whatever position you think I have. I wasn't trying to do it. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I was, this preacher thing, I was trying to go the other way because I had come from preaching. I knew what this life was. Ain't want it. And did I think I would become a college administrator in this part? No, I wasn't trying to do that. Did I think I would even be a college, a teacher, at the collegiate level, grad studies and grad school? No, I wasn't trying to do that. And so, in the same way, I really appreciate what you said. Listen, I went to school and I came out. I was community minded and service was my gig. And I was the driver for a congressman. I got a gig, I interned, I had an opportunity. And that led to one thing, that led to the next thing, that led to lead, those connections actually make sense. And of course, I'm a person of faith. So some of that is, spirit is moving, right? Putting you in putting any one of us on the path. And even if that path seems to be circuitous, it seems to take you in spaces and places. I didn't even know 30 years ago there were Black people in Connecticut, let alone thinking I would come to Connecticut. What? Right? What? And here I am, and have spent a third of my life and a good deal of my ministry career has been in here in Connecticut. So let's go back just a little bit.
Yeah.
You at school, what major in?
I was political science major at the Trinity College, as I like to say to people. Political science, concentration, American government and politics. And like the beauty of, like, I can go in a full just advertisement for Trinity College and what it means to me professionally. From Diana Evans to Stephanie Chambers to Andrea Foco, like it was a masterclass in the academic side of understanding of policy, government, and service. And I wanted to basically take it all in. And so I took as many classes that I could in those topics. I was not someone who was into the science classes per se. You were not going to find me in any of those, but anything that was filled with government, politics, public service, public policy, I was all about it because I just wanted to learn. I was so immersed and loved the academic setting and the learning. And then on top of it, you have the legislative internship program that I was a part of, which I think is one of the most successful internship academic programs in the nation. And I will say it consistently because I've seen the individuals who have come out of that program and what they have done, not just in Connecticut, but also nationally in the communities that they're from. And to be able to be an intern for Senator John Fonfara of Hartford from the Energy Committee and do that for about 6 hours a day, and then eventually have my academic learning of how the process works and how a bill really becomes law. It's not the Schoolhouse Rock way, and all the very machinations of how you can drive and affect policy. I still apply what I learned at Trinity to my day-to-day life professionally. So I was a kid who grew, when we lived in East Hartford, we used to watch town council meetings every other Tuesday. And my father and I would go around and he will say, okay, that's what they were talking about over there. So my mom and my father basically said, you can't be about the community if you don't understand the community. And so we were trying to understand how are these decisions were being made, why they're being made. And that was basically the start of my passion for government public policy. In addition to when we didn't have a computer in the household, but when we went to Raymond Library in East Hartford on Main Street, and I got to rent time on the computer, I was playing Sim City. I was building my own city. I was my own mayor, making sure we're zoning a certain way. It was something that was completely immersed for me.
I appreciate you saying it, and of course, I can sing the praises of some of those very people who are colleagues and trusted colleagues here in this place we call Trinity College. Shout out to all of those you've named, and those unsung, what I would call heroes, who helped students and others get to
I got a visitor.
Got a guest.
You got a guest.
Hey there.
You say hi.
Hi.
Go grab the iPad. Go grab it.
Daddy.
Yes, Paul. No, it's not. Hey, but go grab the iPad. I'll grab it.
I love what we do because we can do it and we right here and it's on the fly. I love it.
Yeah.
So this idea of connecting the community to your interest.
Yes.
Right? Within the context of community, and having mom and dad in particular. Shout out to Paul Sr. Shout out to Paul Sr. I appreciate you and love you as well, sir. In the context of being able to say, okay, you remember what they were talking about? This is what the reference is, right? So somebody said a long time ago, politics is local.
Yes, it is.
Right. So to point to that, while we may be all in the winds of what happens in Washington D.C., where our congressmen and our senators are in fact the Connecticut caucus leads in many instances.
Yes, they do.
In a national way, what is informing them is right here in our backyards, especially as it relates to being the capital city of Connecticut. It is what happens, in the New England context. It is what happens when we're in the town hall, having on our soapbox, if you will, discussing ideas. How do we want our communities to exist? What's important to us? Because whatever it is that's important to me might be important to a couple of other people, and we may find a way in which we could work together.
Yes.
And what I say to folk all the time is that what we have as our so-called democracy didn't drop out of heaven, right? What we got and what we live with is what we created. So if we created it, when I say the we, I'm not talking about the we in one instance, because most, my we wasn't voting. Who's black? Didn't vote. Wasn't property, didn't own no property, and wasn't a member of the Congregational Church. That's what voters were here in Connecticut when it began. All right.
Yes.
So we've come a long way from that. But I'll say this, that it's not what was dictated from on high somewhere and then gets it to us where we have no agency. The fact of business is we have lots of agency. It is how we, in fact, own that agency, own our own power, work in solidarity and collaboration with to create what the kind of communities we want to live. I think some of the problems we have, in fact, all of the problems that we have can be solved because it's not rocket scientists. We can fix unemployment. We can fix much of crime. We could fix some of our social ills and some of the issues if there was a will to make it happen. If there was a will to make it happen. And so I appreciate you saying, for me, that's what piqued my interest. I was able to then make what was lofty practical, because I watched what I call the sausage making actually happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then, so I think one of the interesting things, so obviously, like, it sounds weird to say this, I've been kind of working in this field for 20 years. So it just sounds absolutely weird but it's true. So when I was at the Connecticut Health Foundation, I had to work with a lot of advocates with whom you work a lot with. And obviously there's different styles of advocacy and different ways to want to get your mission, your goal achieved. I would tell people directly, like, my mission and goal was I was the guy to try to get to the table to negotiate the deal. But at the same time, there's also the people who need to be the ones with the bullhorns and the signs to push and pull the legislators to get to the table. And I always told advocates that you need to figure out which one are you, because it's hard to be both. It's really hard. Um, so for me, like, I think everyone has to look in the mirror and say, why do they do what they do every day? And I tell people very much directly, I'm a product of philanthropy. I'm a product of benevolence. I'm a product of government. I'm the son of a 32-year recently retired state employee. That job basically helped change the trajectory of our family. And I look at the various pathways and I look at all the things in my life, and I realize service has always been a leading factor for me, first and foremost. Yes, Paul.
I want a different baby shark.
You want a different baby shark. This is what I do.
Just
So
like the same ones.
I'm here, Paul. I'm here. You want a different one. This is
A different baby shark.
you know we're live, Paul. Okay, there you go.
I love it.
We're live. We're live.
I love it.
But I try to want to tell people that this is good stuff to do. Like, it's this the thing that we failed to even talk about is I became chief of staff a week before the pandemic hit Connecticut.
You sure? We were gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it. Hold on, don't go there yet. We're gonna get there. Because I wanted people to at least understand a little bit of the arc, what I would call the trajectory I mentioned earlier, but the arc of how one comes to a place where you are, and I told you this recently. It was so fun to turn on the TV every day, because during when we were in the height of the lockdown, it wasn't a whole lot, it was a lot to do and not a whole lot to do. We had to fill that time up. And certainly for me, I needed to hear what the statistics were. It was so much fun for me, and for me also reassuring in one sense to sit and watch our governor talk about all the stuff that he talked about during the daily press conferences.
Yes.
But what was also what the piece of that was is you were sitting right next to him, and I know you, so every now and then I would say, "Good job, bud." I would text you, "Good job. I hear you. Could you say a little bit more about that?" I was talking to you, right?
Yeah. Well, it's better than what we got to a point. We did 187 of those press conferences. When you get to press conference number 39, you're just like, anything you care about is the content. You could care less about what you're wearing. And it was starting to become summer-ish. And I started wearing the collar shirt, branded, said Connecticut. And my mom would text me and go, "What are you wearing?" It's just like, why aren't you wearing a tie?
Where your tie at, bud?
I'm like, the governor doesn't wear a tie. And I was stretched. I admit it. I was stretching it wearing the golf shirt, but it said Connecticut on it. But no, the interesting thing for me was when on March 6th, when we had our first case in Danbury, I found out about it when I was down in Greenwich with the governor for a meeting. And I'm driving back up to Hartford. You got a lot of thinking to do driving back up from Greenwich to Hartford, because it's going to take you a while. But we've worked on that on the roads. But you got a lot of thinking to do. And I just remember saying to myself, "Oh, man, this might last a long time." And I just remember now thinking, I need to prepare our team that this could last a long time. And we need to make sure we put people in the right position as well. And March 10th, we got the emergency powers from the legislature. And the first thing I said to our team was, we are in a public health emergency. The governor is directing us to make sure that public health comes first. We are putting the politics to the side and leading with public health. I can't say the same that other states said the same thing, because we knew that we were going to be judged on the long haul, not the short term of it. But it was a very uncertain time because there's no playbook for it. As much as people say, oh, yeah, we did these emergency exercises, this and that. Yeah, we did exercises, but there's no exercise for a 2-year pandemic. When you're talking about closing down schools, potentially, you're talking about having people stay safe, stay home. And you had to figure out who were you going to lean on for information from a content standpoint to best support the governor in his decision making. But I think also the one thing that I had to realize in that situation was, who was I going to lean on personally to get, because your brain had to be on 24/7. And our team could not afford to have off days. Off days means lives are lost. And as I look back to it, there's a lot of unsung heroes. I know a lot of people saw myself and Josh Jabal, but many people didn't see Michelle Gilman. They didn't see General Yvonne in the National Guard. They didn't see Amy Porter, who ran an agency that probably had not many connections to our pandemic response, but was the first person to raise her hand and said, what do you need me? What do you need me to do? And I can go down the line of all these individuals in state government who stepped up and stepped out because they love their state and they love the people of the state. Our goal and our job was to make sure that we kept as many people, the 3.3 million, safe. And I think it's one of the most trying, but one of the proudest moments of my professional life, because of the people I worked with, the leadership of the governor, and the results that we were focused on achieving with politics to the side.
Yeah, and of course, when you put it to the side, that don't mean stuff ain't political.
Correct.
Right.
That's true.
So it's spinning. It's spinning. And let me just echo that that many people can have what I would say opinions about what ought to be done. But it's a very different thing, friends and beloveds, when you actually are at the wheel and the decisions that get made have people's lives at the end of it.
Yes.
And what I say to folk who want to be in service in the ways that you have been in service, it's a very different thing when it's just ethereal or when it's academic or just intellectual. When policies that we make have at the end of it people's real lives.
Yes.
And the choices that we make, the decisions that we make, and really the sacrifices that we make.
I'll tell you this. One of the this is bringing back a lot from that time. We were obviously going on the path about how we were going to do the vaccine distribution. Many states were doing it by 1A or 1B profession, this and that. And we were watching everything that was going on across the country and how people's approaches were. And we were going to go in a certain standpoint up to that Monday. We had our last meeting on Sunday. And I remember myself, Josh Jabal, DJ Gifford, I was Max Reese, who's doing comms, and we're going through all the data, going through the information, and we were provided the different models of what we can do. And the one that was like Model C, which everyone kind of, as we did our internal meetings before the governor, was like, I think we should go this direction, but there's going to be a lot of noise. And that direction was do it by age. And that decision, because we took into account a lot of information and data from local health directors, hospitals and such, who said, hey, we're trying to figure out how we can do this. We were just saying we need to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And I remember telling our team, because my motto, this is a football term. I'm an all-conference football player, damn it. What we used to say at Trinity was, we can sustain noise, but you got to be prepared for an army, and you got to know the difference. And I remember saying to our team, all right, we're going to go in this direction. The governor goes this direction. There's going to be a lot of noise. You better hold tight. But we need to get to that next Monday, so once we start vaccinating, we can show people it can work. And there was a lot of noise. Whew, a lot of noise after we did that Monday announcement. But we held tight as a team with the leadership of the governor. And what it came out, we started vaccinating that following Monday, and we had one of the most successful vaccination efforts than any other state in the country. And everyone started following our path. We had to make difficult decisions and hold to it. But it's okay to make difficult decisions if you thought about all the various elements to that decision. And I think that was the beauty of our press conferences. We weren't making decisions in vacuums. We were telling you why we're making this decision, explain to you why we got to that decision, and making sure you felt informed and safe and comfortable with the direction your government was asking us to go in.
Well, thank you, Paul, and certainly there's going to be, as we move forward from here, there's going to be lots of conversation about what should have, what could have, why didn't we? A lot of what I call it. I come from a particular region of the country and particular cultural context. We play bid whist.
Mm-hmm.
It's card game.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, card game.
I'm not good at it, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, I minored in it in school. I minored in bid whist.
Well, I minored at Trinity NCAA football on PlayStation.
I understand that, and I know some of the minors today. I know some of those minors today. But we say this, there's a lot of after whist. After the hand has been played, there's a lot of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What you should have, okay, no, that's, we have to put that to the side. And I believe in many instances, what will last over time is what were the precedents that were set. And I was very proud as we watched and lived through those early months, quite frankly, Paul, of how Connecticut actually was a leader. This little bitty small state, this a little over 3 million people in population. We're the little state that can and does in many ways and leads, and to have Senator Blumenthal or Senator Murphy, or to see on the major news outlets at any given time, any number of our Connecticut caucus who were leading in their committee works, in the conversations that were being had. I'm always gifted and proud when I'm in DC. I try to go around and make sure I connect. When I'm on Capitol Hill, connect with Congressman Larson or Senator Murphy. I'm almost always when we're in DC, whatever the issue is, I see Senator Blumenthal. Who I remember when I came here 22 years ago, he was the Attorney General of this state. And so he has a track record of the kind of advocacy that I see him doing today. So he's very consistent in that regard. So I can appreciate very much having, what you were and your team and all of the people who were involved. I'm an essential worker here at Trinity College. So knowing what essential workers do and how we have to, we are there when everybody else can go home, when everybody else can, is sleep at night. We say we out here in these Trincal streets. we are having to, and I can appreciate you telling me I got to be at, press conference, whatever it was, but y'all had to meet before the meeting. So your day started early in the morning. Your day ended late at night, and the work that has to go on day for day. There's no off days. You take breaks when you can. When you try to anticipate when there's gonna be it ain't gonna be nothing happening, but when there's less things happening, to step away to get you some renewal and rest, and we got to have that as well.
Yes, you do.
I'm appreciative of that. Can we shift just a little bit, but keep this frame? So you it's no secret. You've said, hey, I'm going to step away now. The governor was reelected, in November, and you made it known pretty early on. Hey, I'm not going to return with the new administration. I'm going to step away. So can you just for a moment let's talk about the Connecticut political landscape?
Yeah.
There was some of us that had hopes we were going to, one side, and let me just, for sake of being fair and honest and open and transparent, I'd probably claim a side. I lean a little to the one side rather than the other side, but that's okay. I rep some colors.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just, I do. And yet I understand we got to do it together, right? To govern is something very different than to be out there campaigning or on your particular soapbox. Get that. Can you take a look at, here we are. We're now maybe on the other side of the critical point in COVID. COVID ain't done. We're not post-COVID, but we're in a different day than what we were talking about in 2020. Can you forecast a little bit or see the lay of the land and say, here's some stuff that you haven't been able to get done yet because you had a pandemic to operate? Are there some things within the context of community life? And let me own that I want to talk about what's happening in our urban settings, not to displace what's happening in our suburban and our rural spaces. They're just as important, but just sheer numbers say we better pay attention to some of the things that are happening in our city, our urban city. So can you talk a little bit about where some of those places are, where there's some of those spaces?
I would say the interesting thing, and over the past 4 years of this administration and this legislature, if you told me that all the things that got accomplished, whether it was in the first year doing minimum wage and pay family medical leave, but also for pay family medical leave, actually doing the implementation and standing it up during a pandemic. If you told me that a clean slate bill, a version of it, got passed during a pandemic, I probably wouldn't say that was like, how do they have time to do that? Or legalization of marijuana and standing up of the marketplace that goes into effect on January 10th. And oh, by the way, the surplus paying down long-term liabilities, changing the trajectory of the cost that's going to be felt and burdened by my son and his children. It was a baffling 4 years. As I say to the governor, a lot of people don't think government can chew gum and walk at the same time. Hell, you were running and chewing gum and you didn't swallow it. But here's the thing that now came about, I think, over the next 4 years. What the pandemic brought about, now I'm putting on my former life's hat of the Connecticut Health Foundation, is what it brought about is it further exacerbated the disparities that we are feeling in our state, health wise, education wise, economic wise. This has to be the next 4 years to really make large gains in those areas in which the pandemic has decided to spread it out. When we see our reading comprehension scores in some of our cities at certain levels, there's not, I know for a fact the governor is not happy about it. Believe me, I talked to him, and I know that he wants to say, how are we going to address that? And I know speaking with Senator McCrory today, who's chair of the education committee, he's thinking about it too. But there's something in our community that we never talk about. And it starts with an M and M and an H. We don't talk about mental health and the role it plays in our everyday life in our Black and brown communities. And I will tell you, this pandemic has really exacerbated the mental health problem that we are feeling in our communities. And one of the things that I worked on is, I like to stay behind the scenes, give ideas, and kind of like. But now the current head of the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Administration in D.C., a great friend of mine, former Commissioner Marian Delphin Ripman, working with her, working with Beth By of Office of Early Childhood, working with Vanessa Durantes. During the pandemic, we put together basically a forum that allowed men of color to talk about mental health because we wanted to take away the stigma. And the first person who talked about it to kind of make everyone feel open up was me. From the fact of trying to be in this job as the first African American to do it. A pandemic hits a week after you take the job, and all the eyes are on you, and you feel the pressure of, excuse my language, don't want to fuck up. And not feeling or knowing who you can talk to about what you're feeling to help you get through the day. And I spoke about some of the things that I felt that I need to deal with so I could be a better person at home and a better person in the workplace, because the pressure was on. And then on top of it, my grandmother died from COVID in the middle of it. So I think the pandemic has made the word disparity a much greater gap in a lot of areas. Education, economic, mental health. And those, I think, are some of the areas that the legislature, the governor, whether they thought was going to have to look at, will have no choice but to look at.
I appreciate you saying that, brother. You full well know during the spring, late spring and summer of 2020, we sat on the lawn for about 2 weeks.
Yep.
Because like the country, Connecticut was on fire in reaction and response to Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And what this country was sick and tired of was, authorized authority having their liberty with Black and brown folk. And again, a kind of Black Lives Matter 2.0, it's Mike Brown and Eric Garner in 2014. It was, Arbery, Taylor, and Floyd in 2020. And as you said a little bit earlier, we took a bullhorn, put it to the side a little bit, and we went on a fast. Faith leaders across traditions. And the very first day of that fast, you texted me and said, "You outside?" I said, "Yep." And we were having conversations from that day to the end of the fast, and then, in fact, in session. So what I say to young folk and explain to them, my role is that of a particular order. I won't ever run for political office. That's not my call, right? I have chosen service as you have, service in a particular way that has for me, not just wearing my colors, i.e. left, right, Democrat, Republican Party affiliation. I'm wearing colors like what's right and what's wrong, right? And there are some things that are just okay. We can have differences of opinion, but there's some things that are just okay. We can't argue about some of this stuff, right? And for me, if we're talking about common good, if we're talking about human flourishing, if those are values, and I think they are, in any kind of governance context, those that which speaks to our humanity, that which speaks to our families and our living, right? It's got to be that, and mental health is one of those that I think, okay, we've made some decisions. I was here, maybe 15, 20 years ago when we made the decision to cut budgets and some of the institutionalized way folk were being treated back in the day, and the decision that was made as a state to put more resources in community health, in particular ways, and not in some of the more institutional ways this state used to handle it. I mean, we've learned some things to take a look at now at this time, how in response to what the pandemic has gifted us with, right? I'm using language that I think is important. It says it has gifted us with things that we've left really still to do. We're not undone. I mean, quite frankly, the efforts that were made, that were already on the books around police accountability, what was done in 2020 actually helped to codify, and to bring together lots of this desperate parts. And so now we have something we can work toward, and it's still work to do there. So what you're naming are what this landscape is, right? And quite frankly, mental health, we see it, I see it in all of my work, right? We just don't talk about work. I need some help. Let me just say that right there. I talk to somebody. You need to talk to somebody. Everybody need to talk to somebody. We all got issues and health to both manage, and not just manage, to really get through. We got, there's issues of life and death, and again, human flourishing that exist all across the board with all of us. Relationships, how we get along with each other, how we not getting along with each other. That's clear. All right. So what we need to do, and where can we get help and resources, and make use of those resources? It is key. And how we do that, and how we lead again. Here we go again. How do we lead in those conversations instead of behind the 8 ball reacting once something done happen?
Correct. No.
Right. We lead right now, or we led right now. We're coming up on the anniversary of what happened in Newtown 10 years ago, decade ago, and here we are again. What we did here was some gain and a model for the rest of the country, quite frankly. Now we need to talk about 10 years later, what has been left undone that needs to get done in relationship to that.
So when you say that, it is very poignant to me. And the thing that I always try to say to people is, so back when people actually read books instead of just looking up statutes online, you have all these blue books. And the thing that I used to say to all our agencies was, before you start recommending a law to be made, let's see if you already have the permission in these books and these laws to do it. And one of the other things that we don't do consistently is a lot of people feel as you talk about the anniversary and such, a lot of people feel that when a law of magnitude is passed, okay, we're done. We have a legislative session every year. We're not Texas that comes in like once, whenever. That means every single law can be reviewed to make sure it's modernized and make sure it's appropriate for the times and the moment and the situation of our state. And I get frustrated when I see people say, "Oh man, we already took up that issue." Okay, but have you actually sat back and said whether or not how it was written and how it's like? Remember, we're the executive branch. We have to make sure these laws make sense so they can be implemented. So we're constantly always saying, "No, that's not. We can't implement it the way you wrote it. That's why it needs to be fixed." But there has to be a willingness from our elected leaders to want to ensure that our laws are appropriate for what our state is.
That's right.
And that means you have to have the gumption to really look and review and ask the questions and force the discussion. And like they're not in stone.
That's right. And even if they were, we can build new structures and write new stone walls.
Yeah.
Write it in the stone again differently. I mean, that's what the Egyptians did. Right? They just built another pyramid and put it in the state, wrote it up in the stone. It's in the stone.
Well, in our state, for our example, like we not only have the legislative session, but we have the ability to have a constitutional a conference to be able to do it. And the law allows for a certain time frame in which to do that and opt to do it, but we haven't done that for a while. But like I said, this is supposed to be a constantly evolving government and constantly evolving state. So those are the times where you need to have those reviews and be willingness to make those reviews.
It is, again, for me, it's about, so what we do, some of what we do within the context and the leadership of More on Monday, we're in this time right now of reviewing what's on the horizon.
Yeah. By the way, let me just say this.
Yes.
I'm laughing because you're gonna laugh. So my son used to go to daycare at the Capital Child Development Center, which was across the street from where Moral Mondays usually occur.
Right.
So I used to have to remind him, say, "All right, there's going to be a Moral Monday demonstration. So you just tell the administration so they know."
That's going to be a thing.
It's going to be loud.
It's going to be loud for a minute.
It's okay.
It's all right.
It's okay.
Right.
It's for a good reason.
I get that. So that's so funny. That's so funny. Off this right here. I got a story to tell you about that. It's funny. What I will say is that this is connected to what I was getting ready to say. There are we're in this time frame right before session begins. We're getting ready to enter into the long session here. For those of you who don't know Connecticut state politics and our state legislative flow, we have 1 year where we're in session for a longer time, and then the other year, the next year, we're kind of short sessions. And so when it's the longer sessions, the precedent is to take on, more difficult issues where there's a bit more, let me just call it, where there's some rancor, to take on 1, 2, 3 rancorous issues, while in the shorter sessions, let's get some things that we can agree on, get that done while we set up for the long haul with the longer sessions. And in these longer sessions, what has been my experience these last 22 years now I've been here in Connecticut, that there is an arc to it, right? That we build, police accountability for us didn't start in 2020. It started in really in 2010 with some of the laws that if you remember, now Senator Winfield, who was then State Rep Winfield, helped us to get pull off. I mean, there were things that happened. And I say this unashamedly. Some of the stuff that we have to do may take some time. And while it's taking the time, let's build the will for it to get done. I think for example, if people want to work, they want to get, they want to have a living, you want to earn a living wage. I think what's right is that we provide the opportunity for them to get in line and get that job if they want to work. I think people who want to get health care ought to be able to get it. There's some things that I think are correct, and I think we're leading in those ways. We got a few minutes left. If we're gonna, attempt at some of these big things, mental health, for example, the mental health issue, and I think we are there. There's some critical legislative issues that we gotta solve. We gotta put our money where our mouth is. We gotta put our policies where we think our efforts ought to be. How might we do that, and how might you suggest people get involved? I mean, yeah. I'm often touting, this is how you get involved as an outsider. Mm-hmm. You've been at the center of it. You've been in behind the scenes. Yeah. What would you say would be helpful for folks to hear as we move into this?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, I think a lot of people need to figure out what are the issues they want to advocate for now. I think so many people wait until, let's see what bills get raised and things of that sort. This is the time to actually advocate for bills to be raised to those chairs, to those members of the legislature, because they need to propose it and write it up for them. He wants to join, so.
All right.
Hey, as I say to people, he's the third most powerful person in the state of Connecticut. here's every conversation and everything. The other thing is find other organizations and people in which have similar goals, because if you work with masses, you'd be surprised what you'd be able to do. Like, it's no different than how major corporations push to get things done. They have multiple lobbyists and this and that. They're spreading out so they can be able to push. I think sometimes a lot of advocates just focus on 2 or 3 legislators or focus on that committee. No, you need to figure out how, when that bill gets called to the floor of the House of the Senate, how you can get the majority of the people to get passed. As I always say to people, a win's a win's a win's a win. You got to get the most screens. What? Yes, you can. Go ahead. He's asking for a snack. See, no, but he asked. He asked. Okay. He didn't just go in the cabinet. But the other thing that I would say is, I think a lot of advocates, a lot of people just think that the results are just happen overnight. I'm a person who likes to create a vision board. And my father, when I was learning how to read, would say, see it, say it, see it. And you got to see what the path is. So when you did the fast, you knew exactly what your path was. You knew exactly whose attention you're trying to get. And it wasn't just the governor or me. The governor came out there and saw you. You was trying to get to the attention of the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and those chairs of the committee to say, if this thing goes another day, more people are going to come, and it's going to grow. So if If you don't want that, then let's get. But you didn't just say, I'm just going to go out and fast and see what happens. And I think so often we have advocates who just say, you know what, we're just going to go out there, hold sign, yell something. And I would say to people, all right, you just did a 1-day press conference. So so that's Monday. What are you doing Tuesday? Because you haven't planned it out. So, like I said, I'm of the football mentality. You can't just play the game without having a preseason. You can't prepare for the preseason unless you have an off season. And you need to review the tape. You need to review the path. And you need to review where you want to go to. So, in short, find other like-minded organizations or people who are looking to achieve the goal. Organize and coordinate with each other. Understand what not just your goals, but where you're willing to, what's the line you're willing to get to. There's not a entity or organization that will get 100% of what they want. Hell, the governor doesn't get 100% of what he wants. But I'll tell you this, when I get my 80%, I could tell you it's 100 because I'm coming back for the next 20 next session with another plan. You have to be prepared, because for as much as you are for an issue, there's going to be those who are against it, and they're coming with their arguments too.
With their plan,
with
their ducks in a row, they are counting votes. They know who their friends are. They also know who their foes are. And thank you, Paul. These change has a theory, right? That what we do in organizing, there are strategies. Right? There are strategies, there are approaches, and there are ways to get change as you work to do that. And you work that in collaborative ways. I love talking this stuff. I love just a shameless plug. I'm teaching a class this coming semester on faith and the role of faith-based organizations in nonviolent movement social justice work.
At Trinity?
No, I'm teaching this at another institution. I'm teaching it at another institution. They may ask me to do something later at Trinity, but I'm just messing. We're good. We work collaboratively, and anybody from Trinity can take a class at Harvard International University.
Yes.
That class. So it is. What I'm hopeful of, and what we have decided to turn our attention to, and to use our platforms, Pamela and I, and the leadership of More Monday, Connecticut Black Women, and the other organizations we try to provide some leadership around, is to do that in collaborative ways, to spend our time talking, teaching, sharing the information and the knowledge base that we have. That change can occur. You actually can do some things, but you got to work on multiple fronts. I'm sometimes the agitator, sometimes I'm the diplomat, sometimes I'm the negotiator. Right? You got to know what time is it.
You have to know.
You got to read the signs. What are the strategies? What are the losses you get? You take an L, but learn from the L, so that you can get the W later. So it is profound. I appreciate you, brother. We gotta go. It's time to go. We done been on this thing an hour, and I look, Paul, like, Daddy, would you hurry up? I appreciate you.
He's just going through the cupboard. He's like, Daddy, keep talking. I'm going through the Orioles. No, just seriously, I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm always here for you. And
absolutely. Mary, happy to you and yours.
Exactly.
And folks, we'll be back again. We are committed to this kind of work and this kind of sharing as we bring to you leaders from across the country, and right here in Connecticut's own Paul Mounds. We ain't even ask him what he gonna do after he leaves the governor's office, but that's another conversation.
I'll tell you the first thing I'm gonna do. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have to take a trip somewhere. I haven't taken a real vacation, and I don't know. I might go to Scottsdale, Arizona, and see the San Francisco Giants spring training. I've always wanted to go to see spring training baseball, always, but it's always during session time.
Right, can be gone that time. That's the wrong time to be on vacation. That's
But
right.
no, first thing for real, I'm really gonna do is just. You saw my little guy. I spent as much time with that guy, man.
All right. All right. All righty. Well, thank you for this time. Thank you for this hour plus. I appreciate you, brother. And blessings to you and your continued journey. I can't wait till the next thing you do. It's gonna be rock solid. And I hope to be somewhere around cheering you on and making sure you cut me a little slack. All right. Talk to you soon, brother.
I'll
Thank
see
you
you.
all. Peace, everybody.